I guess if I could change anything in the space, it would be like to change people's just preoccupation with the silly stuff that's really noisy and visible, and just start trying to, go out of your way to find incredible, cool stuff that's being built that has real value.
If you could go back to the start of your career, any advice for your younger self?
Yeah, I definitely think there will be many different ways to do DeFi, and it'll vary a lot on the centralization front and on the permissionless, no KYC front too.
So can you give away some of your secrets then for building an engaged audience online?
Engage with people, put yourself out there, don't underestimate yourself, and actually believe in the space. Like, understand what's being built here and why it's structurally better. Don't be a tourist. Like, people will be able to pick up on that. So I think that's a big one too.
Hello and welcome to the Behind the Blockchain podcast. Today I'm joined by Dmitry from RabbitX, also known as Back the Bunny on social media. If anyone listening or watching loves DeFi, then you'll probably have heard of him on Twitter. Dmitry, welcome to the show. How are you?
Doing great. Great to speak with you, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah, good stuff. So Dmitry, for people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. So, name is Dmitry. I'm the guy behind the Back the Bunny account on Twitter. I work for an awesome project called RabbitX. We are a perpetuals project on Starknet. And been with the team for about a year and a half or so, gone through some different iterations and development cycles and roles and all kinds of cool stuff. And have a TradFi background and some startup experience and published writing experience. So I have a pretty generalist work history that comports pretty well with what I've been doing here so far. So
great stuff. Yeah, I was going to ask you if you could talk us through your career journey so far.
Yeah. It's a bit unusual, but I guess it has a theme of sorts to it. Very financially oriented. I started off, frankly, managing a gym back when from Arizona, when we're from originally. Did that for a while, and then got a job in finance that brought me out to New York City as a risk analyst at a brokerage on their hedge fund desk. I did that for a handful of years. Series 7, Series 63, CFA level 1, and good like corporate proper financial experience. And then I did some writing for some publications throughout, financial, political, like economic, several different ones have been published across a handful. And then did some business to business, B2B sales experience, sales work in the startup world for financial technology again, fintech. And then I had a bit of a good run, as many people did in the bull market, and it actually led me to crypto. My DeFi crypto background was a little. I learned about it a long time ago, but actually really only properly got into it around 2020. Came across DeFi during that time and got really into that on a personal level. And then the bear market wiped me out, as it did many, and made me kind of realize, hey, I love this space. Let's see what's here, job wise. And it brought me to RabbitX, and here I am. So, and in hindsight, I'm very happy it happened, because I'm much happier here and with what I've learned than I was just managing my own money and just trading and what have you. So
that sounds cool. So could you just talk us through, or maybe describe what you do in your current position? So what is it that you do for RabbitX?
So that's been very contingent on our development, like where we've been, because my roles have definitely changed. Initially, when I got brought on, it was more writing, some strategy, communications, community stuff. And then we pivoted. We used to be an interest rate swap project. That was when we were Strips Finance. And then that kind of struggled to find product market fit. I think interest rate swaps are a little nascent for DeFi as far as where it stands now. So we, still wanted to be a derivatives desk. So we pivoted to perps. And so I did a lot of research and some, work into other products and kind of analysis there, and kind of helped cultivate and build the product. So some product management, some strategy, a lot of research. That was during the buildup of Rabbit. And then when we launched on testnet, and then, started to get enough of a product ready that we wanted eyes on us, it then pivoted to all right, well, how are we going to get known? How are we going to get visibility? And I've been basically purely, not purely, but mostly like you could say content marketing, writing, community, stuff like that. But most like the visibility that you see on Twitter has been extremely powerful. You could say just, I'm kind of loath to say content marketing, but I guess it's technically true. Like a way to kind of funnel attention and, get eyes on us and help build us up. And it's been, again, we've done really, really well from that. So I do mostly that. I do all of our content, our writing, and, podcasts like this and whatnot. So it's kind of all over the place. I don't want to be too rambly, but I guess that starts us off as to how I got to where I am within Rabbit.
Yeah, for sure. That's really interesting that you've been able to pick up on all sorts of different roles within Rabbit, to be honest. Did you start out and think, you know what, now I've moved into the Web3 space or the DeFi space, now I want to be, the face of a project, or I want to be the person who drives traffic to the project and this kind of stuff. Was that an idea, or is that just kind of naturally happened over time?
Yeah, no, it naturally happened. Like I really wanted to do a good job getting us visibility and frankly getting, like an awareness for what we are. And frankly, I thought from the very get-go, the best way to do that is to be original and to say stuff that is worth paying attention to. That's really kind of the emphasis of it all. I think that's why it's been successful because, and this is why I say I'm like loath to call it content marketing because that feels insincere. And like, I'm very much not like, I'm very sincere. And I think people can tell that with what I post and write. You could almost just say it's like me blogging, frankly, or running the site like the account like a personal account. And so people can really like authentically see me. And I think that's been attractive for like people seeing a transparent, forthright, hopefully competent person working for a project. They think, all right, well, if this project attracts this guy who I like or who I like what he has to say, let me look into the project. And it's been this very like organic sort of way to get attraction towards us or get, attention towards us. So no, I didn't at all view it as this. In fact, I was very worried it wouldn't work out and I wouldn't be as interesting as I hoped I would be. So yeah, it just developed naturally is the short way to say it.
Wow. And is there anything notable that you've learned throughout your career that's really allowed you to thrive in this type of role for Rabbit?
Yeah, it's been kind of a cumulative thing. Not so much from like, I would say it's probably less my career background. I'd say that's probably the least important thing in a way. Like it's pretty diffuse and it certainly has helped me cultivate like social and communication skills that I'm sure I use. But I feel like it's more what I do on a personal level in terms of like my reading and what naturally interests me and kind of how I distill all that and present it on the Back to Bunny account that's really moved the needle. So I feel like it's more actually a result of my kind of personal like stuff I do and have done in my downtime and what naturally kind of is stuff I've learned about that's being leveraged here. But the professional background does as well because as I mentioned, it's pretty broad, and I'm sure that communication style I've cultivated over the years plays a role too.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned like published writing and that sort of stuff. Obviously, being able
Right,
to
right.
write well and write things that people want to read or have or can read, I guess. That gives you that ability to be able to blog and write and create content that people want to digest, I suppose.
Totally.
Um,
Like, without that TradFi experience, I might not have certain understandings like that I pull from, and then the published writing definitely feeds into it as well. So yeah, it's rather holistic. It's definitely a little bit of a lot of things. So
cool. So is there any key traits that you think that you've developed that allowed you to be successful in this type of role? By the sound of it, curiosity being one, getting into the space in 2020 and wanting to learn, everything about it, and now you're kind of fully involved. So, are there any other traits that you think have really helped in your success?
yeah, on a personal level, like this is one I really hearken back to a lot. And in another pod I did as well, someone asked something similar, and I think curiosity is like by far like like learning like self-educating and in order to even get there you sort of have to be curious about what's going on and not afraid to give it a shot. And if you don't know what you're doing, which you probably don't, and no one does when they're first starting out, it's fine. Like just having the curiosity and the interest to just let's there's something here. I think this is a skill set I should cultivate. This is something I should learn about, even if it's not directly related to my field or what I'm doing. Like you could do certain AI tools and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just, learn by doing. Just go out and try. Like that's probably the biggest thing by far. And then along those lines, I'd say don't be afraid of screwing up, and don't be afraid of putting yourself out there. So I don't know if you want to say intrepidness. That feels a little bold, but like, in order to know if you have ideas worth listening to, you got to put them out there. So don't be afraid if some of them aren't good. It's okay.
I think that's what holds people back quite a lot, is that willingness to put themselves out there. Either because they might have that, I guess, even that fear of people they know maybe judging some of the stuff that they're saying, or something like that. I see it all the time, to be honest.
Mm.
Obviously, a lot of the place where I build my network is obviously LinkedIn. Um, Being a recruiter, obviously I'm on there pretty much all day, every day. And only in the last couple of years have I really started really putting myself out there in terms of content and creating content and this kind of stuff. And obviously creating the podcast. This is the first podcast I've recorded. I mean, we're kind of I think I'm maybe 15 episodes in now, or
Nice.
15 episodes in. So yeah, I've learned and developed, and now I really don't mind if my face and yeah is out there, or my content and stuff is out there, because you want it to be, right. That's kind of the
Right.
idea of it. You want people to be able to learn from it. But there's tons of people who maybe feel a little bit nervous about putting that kind of stuff out there, putting themselves out there. Have you got any
Totally.
advice for anyone if they're trying to start, or they want to start in that kind of space, or they want to start with content?
Yeah, I know, and I know where you're coming from. Like, it's you realize like you should take these opportunities too as they present themselves. Like when you asked, to have me on, I was like, yes. Like I've learned, like, just saying yes to stuff, especially when it gets you in touch with a cool, a cool, smart guy with shared interests, which I would describe you as, right? Like,
Thanks.
it's nice to make connections like that. We're making a piece of content together right now that we hope is useful, that will be persistent and continue to exist out there. It's not like it's a like a radio broadcast where it exists one time and then poof, it's gone. Like, so who knows, like,
Yeah.
a couple months from now, who might come across this and might want to speak to me, want to speak to you. So like, you really like learn, and this ties in a bit to your question, I think, like to increase your surface area of exposure, or being noticed or being listened to. So like, the content you create, like, the threads I write, or the blog posts I put out there, like, those are always working in a way, right? They're always floating out there in some way. Who knows, might come across them, read them. I've had some people DM me from stuff I've had out for months that I thought no one was looking at. Again, it turns out someone's looking at them. So really kind of view like you're putting yourself out there as increasing your surface area for luck, your surface area for getting heard, being read, noticed, etc. So like, say yes as often as you can. And, to get yourself to kind of get over that hump, I guess, which was your original question, just as best as you can, try to immunize yourself from like being afraid of criticisms or the negativity you're afraid might happen. That's usually where the apprehension comes in. And honestly, most people aren't going to be negative. Like, it's not going to, like,
Mhm.
all those fears you have, they're really unfounded. It's like the overweight or out of shape person going to the gym. It's like, oh, the fit people are going to, they're going to notice me, whatever. It's like, no one cares. They're not going to even look at you. In fact, they might even think
Yeah.
it's cool that, like, I'm a big guy. I have a workout background. Like, no one has ever knocked on a out of shape person trying. Like, I've never
No.
seen that, literally, in like over a decade of going to the gym. So it's like, remember that when you're putting yourself out there, like, people generally like to see others succeed. And unless you're putting out some really incendiary stuff or attacking something, you can probably expect that it's going to be relatively positive. At worst, it'll be neutral and no one notices it, which is whatever. Fine, at least you tried. But don't get in your own head, and don't think that people are going to be critical or negative. Most won't notice, and frankly, those that do will probably be encouraging for you if they can tell you tried. So that's my yes, long answer there, but I hope it's
That's
useful.
no, that's good advice. It's good advice. And I guess something to add as well, in Web3, the industry is still early enough for people to want to help each other, and projects to help each other, and people within various different projects to try and kind of lift everyone up, I suppose, and really grow the space. So it's kind of a perfect time to start making content, really.
Hmm.
Whilst everyone's still in that phase of wanting to help each other and really help grow.
Right.
Um, I was had a really interesting conversation, actually. One of the podcast episodes I did, I think it was number two, with someone called Michael Ionita. So Michael is the VP of engineering at DAP Radar, if you know of DAP Radar.
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah, so Michael actually got his job at Radar because he was producing YouTube videos about Web3, about various different types of engineering and content and this kind of stuff. And Radar spotted him on YouTube and then called him up and said, "Look, we love what you're saying. We'd love you to run our engineering team." So that just shows how powerful, creating content can be. And if you can
Yeah.
push past the fear of putting yourself out there, it can lead to all sorts of possibilities and stuff, right? And as you said, you build your connections and you kind of you never really know where you're going to end up.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
totally. Like it's way more powerful than any like I think resume, unless
mm,
you're like maybe a really technical person. But then again, your content is your GitHub at that point, right? It's just different
yeah,
content. But yeah, I think especially in this space, it's that goes a really long way for people seeing more who you actually are, your competence in real life, like in a very meritocratic type way. And I just feel like especially in this industry, your background matters the least, and if people can see some stuff you put out there that's genuine or is interesting or shows that you have a real sincere motivation or organic kind of involvement in this arena, yeah, it does a lot. It's really powerful. So yeah, don't be apprehensive, put it out there. It can't hurt. like remember that, like, your worst case scenario is no one notices it. Like it's not going to backfire, so just at least put it out there and it will probably only be good.
it's good advice. So can you give away some of your secrets then for building an engaged audience online?
uh, it's funny, like I don't have very like intentional things I do like with that in mind. Like when I write about something, it's because it honestly interests me, or when I put a comment out there, or when I'm even like a reply guy. Like I'm not doing it with the intent in mind. All right, like I'm gonna build my impressions for the month, or let's get engagement up. It's really like an authentic interaction, and I feel like if you do that enough, people understand and sense who you are. Like they know who they're talking to in a way. They know you as well as if they had met you in real life. Eventually, I feel many people online know me better than friends that I've known in person for quite a while, or even my brother. Frankly, at this point, it's as they've seen a lot more of me in like my current stage of personal development. Uh, so tying, what was your question? Oh, how to build an engaged audience.
Yeah,
I would just be very persistent with interacting with people, saying, if you have something to say, don't be afraid to say it. If you don't have anything to say, though, also don't think you have to put something out there. This is something that really, I've actually written about this a couple of times. Like, what did I say? I think I said there's no problem with silence in the absence of substance. Like, don't think you have to be topical always. And, a current event occurs. I need to put something out there for engagement or whatever. Like people, they'll sense like that kind of rote, uninspired posting that's probably like everyone else's. Like the best way to stick out is to stick out, and to do that, you can't recycle or say the same things that everyone else is saying. So try to be original, and by that I mean at least have the thoughts be your own. Um,
mhm.
and just be authentically you when you share stuff, or when you opine about something. It goes a long way, and people really sense that. So I think naturally that builds a level of engagement, because people sense they're not talking with a contrived sort of personality. They sense they're talking with another guy who they want to hear what he has to say. And
Yeah,
I think it's the kind of reason why, like, no one, very few people engage with corporate accounts on Twitter, because they're very safe, they're very predictable, they're not very interesting, right? Like, don't be
yeah,
concerned with letting yourself shine through, even in domains where it's more maybe professionally inclined, or more like, has a business angle to it. I think that's the best way to get engagement. Don't be afraid of being a little unorthodox and unpolished, so to speak. Uh, be thoughtful, be substantive.
no, that's good. It's good advice. And do you think this may be a slightly challenging question? Do you think you found it easier to speak things that are on your mind, or easier to say certain things because of the Back the Bunny account as opposed to Dimitri and this is my face kind of account?
Hmm. Um, yeah, I'm not. I don't know. That's an interesting like counterfactual to run. If I had done this like with a doxed account, I mean, the thing is though, I am quasi doxed. Like people who I work with know who I am. And
Yeah.
I really just block, I block my face, but you can see my, from here down, you can hear my voice. So I like that it's enough to like keep me personally. I want people to focus on like what I'm saying and the
Okay.
substance that I'm putting out there. And I just don't think my face adds to that, I guess. But like in real life, like I did some speaking events the last couple of weeks in Austin and San Francisco, and I doxed there. Like people know I was the guy behind the account, so I'm not like
Okay.
ultra reserved about it. Like I'm not too schizo here, but I just don't like to have. I just don't think there's like uh, I like it more of the essence of it being this idea or this sort of brand, so to speak, that is me, but it's disassociated from my face. And I don't think I would change the tenor or maybe like the aggressiveness that I say things or the stuff I'd cover if you saw my face. Because I do say some things that are sometimes a little off color or, they're, yeah, I mean, they're a little based. Like, I don't think that would change. So I'm just thinking out loud from your question because it's an interesting one. I'd like to think no, that it really wouldn't make much of a difference, but I like just keeping them separate because I just don't think there's a value add on the personal front. And as long as you don't go too far with that and like avoid in-person interactions or, conversations like I'm having with you where I'm not putting on like a voice synthesizer or something, you can
Yeah.
get a tasteful boundary there of maintaining your personal identity, not putting that out there, but also putting out your authentic self. And people are really drawn, I think, to that more than a face. So
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And I guess that's the beauty of Web3. Being able to remain anonymous in the Web3 space is very normalized. If you were in more of the corporate world, it definitely wouldn't be. So
yeah,
if people are wanting to get started with content, growing a community or growing an online presence, whatever it might be, if you're in the Web3 space, then you can become an online persona and keep that very separate from your personal one, right? I guess that's the beauty of the industry that we're in.
yeah,
Um,
agreed. There's a place for both, and I don't think, and yeah, like you said, it's not viewed distastefully. I think it's actually completely people get it, and yeah. So whatever makes you feel more comfortable, how you put yourself out there, it's not something that's frowned upon. I feel either way.
yeah, for sure. So, what's it really like then building in a startup in Web3? Obviously, there's the glamorous side of it that people see where, there's been money invested from the VC and everyone's scaling and growing and making loads of money in crypto and, all this sort of stuff. But what's it actually like when you're on the ground in it day to day?
So I mean, yeah, it's like just a really radically remote, very results driven sort of environment, where we have things we want to discuss or want deliverables we want to hit on, and it's more just like get it done. One thing I really like the most about it is that like it's not, this obviously is not like a clock in style of job. Like it's not like you need to, like the hours that you work don't really matter so much so long as you get the things you need done. And I really like the sort of radical emphasis on output and
Mhm.
deliverables and productivity more than like a veneer of that, which I feel like the corporate world and like the, having to work in an office world is very preoccupied with in a superficial way that to me isn't like at all necessarily indicative of how productive or how much value you're adding. I think that's the right way to view it. It's not the hours you're working, it's the value you're adding. And
Yeah.
we just only see it through that lens. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I've worked for a couple of DeFi projects actually, and they both were like that, including Rabbit that I'm at now. So just drawing from that, that seems to definitely be a theme there. And I have my to do list. I have the stuff I do every day that I like to check in on and make sure everything's going well, and then like the deliverable ones that I'm working on, and as long as I'm consistently grinding towards that and getting stuff out there, then we're all good. Like it's really cool to be around a bunch of adults that like don't try to micromanage how you do things, and just are kind of guided by a similar like telos and objective and belief in terms of like DeFi and what we're working towards, and it's refreshing and it's fun. Like I can't imagine working anywhere else or in another industry. Um, so yeah, it's fun. It's really cool to be able to work with people who are output oriented and aren't superficial.
No, that sounds good. And Is there anyone or anything, sorry, that you think people need to be aware of? So if they're making the shift from Web 2 into Web 3, is there anything that you really need to be aware of, whether it be mindset or the industry or technology or the certain expectations maybe, or whatever it might be? Anything that springs to mind?
Um, I think, and this is something that was a little jarring for me at first, was like, because in like the traditional, like kind of business environment, you could say Web 2 environment, I'll use it as a proxy for like old economy work, like
Yeah.
corporate work, office work, even startup work. If it's making you go to an office and like, I'm going to use Web 2 as a proxy for that.
Okay.
Those jobs have like very clearly defined, you've done your KPI, you've hit your quota, like good job, like you did the confines of, your division of labor is more clear cut and you did the job description well, so you're doing a good job. I think most jobs like generally are relatively good at that, and as they should be, like old economy jobs, Web 2 jobs. There's much less of that in Web 3. And I remember being very almost uncomfortable initially, where when I first got brought on, I was like, am I doing a good job? Like, this is like, I didn't get a ton of feedback, which maybe was a cultural thing. Some of our people we work with out of Singapore, so maybe like an Eastern cultural thing is they're not as like feedback oriented, but they, we were also all very remote. So you just don't get that degree of like, maybe, I don't want to say validation, but like being aware, like, okay, I'm doing, you like this so far, like I'm on the
Yeah.
path of delivering value, something like that. That was much more nebulous at first, so being more comfortable with like some ill-defined maybe roles or KPIs or sort of what you're doing, like you're going to have to read the tea leaves a little bit. You have to kind of figure out how to add value in your own way, and that might not be like very clearly described to you as like, okay, do this job description. Like that probably won't exist so much. Maybe if you're technical or a dev, that exists more so because that's much more like
Yeah.
objective. But in the qualitative sphere, it's definitely much less so. So be a little comfortable with some discomfort in that area and understand that it's both like liberating and a little, it's if you get this extra autonomy, but then you also have to figure out how to fill it yourself because no one's holding your hand as much. So something to keep in mind if you come over here, there's less rigidity, but there's also less
Yeah.
like clear cut, do this to accomplish this.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot less process involved in a lot of Web3 startups as there might be in the more kind of corporate world. In larger corporates, you might have, right, this is your HR person you can go to for holidays or this or that
Right,
or
right.
promotion criteria or weekly one-to-one type things that you might have with line managers and this kind of stuff. So I guess there's a lot less process in the space currently. It'll probably be something that over time, as businesses grow and the space develops, it will probably start to uh, be implemented more and more, I guess, processes and that kind of rigidity maybe.
Yeah,
But but
possibly.
but I
I think
guess
I
we'll
think I
we'll
think that'll
see.
come with scaling and as certain orgs grow. I think that's just a natural byproduct of being large. Like it's a well-known phenomenon that the larger the company, the more bureaucracy and layers of middle
Yeah,
management get instantiated. And there's obviously a reason for that. Like the structures become more complex and more interactive. You need to have these things so the communication nodes within the company work. But the thing about DeFi and like Web 3 is like you might not need to hire a lot of people to like really really scale something up. Like Uniswap, I forget how many employees they have. I think they have like 50 or 60.
yeah,
And at certain points, they were doing volume commensurate with Coinbase, which has like 5,000 employees. I just did a thread like touting like the unit economics and kind of the inevitability of DeFi, like drawing some insights into like the structure of these organizations. Like, listen, you just need less people, you need less capex, you need less investment, you need all kinds of less to almost to build like the same level of service. So maybe you won't see as much strong divisions of labor with these groups because we don't need to get that big from a personnel standpoint to like really scale the service of what we're providing. So just thinking out loud, like on that, like I would definitely imagine there would be
yeah.
more structure, but I would not think it's going to be commensurate with what we're seeing in the old economy kind of world because we're building stuff that just needs way less hierarchy and layers of middle management.
Yeah, no, that's really good insight. really good insight actually, and that's reminded me of I was helping a new Dex scale their team almost this time last year actually, and they were able to off a team of maybe 12 to 15 people. That was it. That's all they wanted to grow by. That's all they needed to grow by in order to scale as much as they wanted to, and
Right.
that was it really. They didn't need anyone else. Obviously, they may be able to bring in the odd kind of team of contractors at certain times and this kind of thing, but they were very, very confident that they could do everything they needed to do with a very lean team.
Yeah.
But yeah, like
Yeah.
you said, maybe that's where the future's heading and stuff. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
so so what's it like then building through a bear market compared to building through a bull?
So I don't have actually a personal history there on building in a bull. I have
Okay.
like invested in a bull, but I
Yeah.
mean, it was me getting wiped out that kind of prompted me to even look for stuff in this space anyway. Uh, so I guess I'll speak anecdotally. Like the bull, like just everything's easier. Like it's just the vibes are a little higher. There's more tourists. There's more people just trying to grab free money. So I would say there's definitely less sincerity and people actually building because like, hey, I believe in this as like a system and a framework and as a new paradigm to transact. Whereas I'm sure, you have a lot of people who are just like, yeah, the VCs are funding a lot for it right now. So why not? And I only need 5 people to run the company. So let's do it. Those people get fleshed out, I feel, pretty easily and stuff like this because they're not actually here for the right reasons. They're just here for economic reasons, which I guess isn't like the wrong reasons, but it's a weaker reason. It's a reason with less
Yeah.
conviction. Whereas now, the people you have here are just a little bit more battle tested. I feel like if you're here now building something, it's not because it's necessarily easy. It's not like BCs are throwing money around and your token like 5x's for no reason anymore. So now you just have all this, you just made $500,000 for no reason at all. So, like when that's not there, what drives you has to be more of like we're building something for the long run and actually creating something that we think provides value. So I think the very nature of that kind of those higher walls, vets for a better person, curates for just a better breed of builder and colleague and just person you want to be around. So in a way, like I like it. I like that it's like the more hardcore types that are like building something they like and believe in, and not just because they think their token will 10x and then they want the VCs will dump it and then they'll probably abandon the project. There's way less of that. So I would say that's probably the main difference is like the cultural change that in the bear market, frankly, I think it's vastly for the better.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. And obviously at the moment there are a lot of people who are obviously doubling down in their projects and trying to build really good foundations ready for the start of the next run, for example, or maybe their token launch or project launch, whatever it might be.
Hmm.
How do you make sure that you don't get burnt out when you're working in this kind of Web3 startup environment? Because I can imagine it's quite an intense place to be. You've all got tons of deliverables, you know what you need to do. You haven't necessarily got someone there, as you mentioned, uh, kind of holding your hand, or you haven't got the processes around you, whatever it might be. But how do you make sure that you don't get burnt out in that environment?
Yeah, I sometimes don't do a great job there, honestly, in terms of hours and just writing and trying to always work towards something. You just have
Yeah,
to remember that, like when your eyes get tired or when your mind's foggy or when your heart's not in it as much, like take some time away. Like it's okay, like you don't need to. We're not. No one's measuring your hours. No one's making you clock in. So if you're getting stuff done and working towards something, which if you're inclined to feel burnout, that implicitly states that like you're working really hard. So I'm sure you're caught up on what you need to catch up on. I'm sure you're not behind. And even if you are a little behind, like remember your productivity will almost certainly be better if you take some time away. There are some studies that even found that lawyers who took more vacation time ended up having higher billable hours. Their productivity
okay.
was better. So while that seems counterintuitive, right? Like you'd think taking vacations and all that would yield less income, but it actually makes the time you work more productive. So like, don't be preoccupied with like nominal hours. That's a very boomer way, I think, to view this. Like, all right, I need to work 60 hours or 70 hours a week. Like, no, you need to get like certain deliverables done because they provide value. Like if that only takes you 4 hours, that's fine. Like who cares? It's not a nominal hour, linear time thing. It's a, are you creating thing? And remember, like creating quality stuff means you need to be present and productive and not burnt out. And if you feel that, go vibe, go take some time, chill a little bit. It's not a bad thing, and you'll be better off for it, and you'll feel better for it too. So just listen to your body, listen to your eyes and mind, and your vigor too. If it's a little abated or not what it once was, don't be afraid to listen to that.
And do you think you will get less burnt out if you're working on a problem that you really believe in and that you're really passionate about?
Yeah, definitely. Like, cause then it's, yeah, I mean, unequivocally so. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
if you're working on something that you're just paid to work on, when that's done adequately, or when you've fulfilled that, you tend to stop because, you know, but when you're doing something because you want it to genuinely be good, that's a hack to get someone to work way harder than what you're nominally paying them for. For the hours and time I spend writing stuff and putting it out there, I mean, I'm giving RabbitX like way more than what they initially, what I signed up to work for, frankly. And because a big part that really galvanizes that for me is that like, I enjoy it. Like I really do. It reflects positively on Rabbit. It does a great job bringing, more traders to us. And it also reflects really positively on me. I'm building up in my own like personal brand and visibility there as well. And as that builds up, it also works well for Rabbit. So there's like these beautiful aligned incentives going on here of, this reflects positive on you, it reflects positive on the company. Like, so it drives like the absolute best out of me you possibly could. And you would never find that passion if you just didn't believe in what you were doing. So try to find something that you think is cool and that you think like, yeah, I really want this to succeed. I want this. And when this succeeds, it'll reflect positively on me because there will be some latent motivating factors there that you won't anticipate that'll just crop up and will really bring the best out of you. And you'll wake up out of bed every day just happy to hop online and start doing your thing. So
That's good. It's good advice. That's been a real common theme, I guess, from having conversations with people like you on this podcast, is that people are so passionate about what they do that I feel like it's not necessarily a job. It's more of a real interest than what you really want to do. You'd be reading about and writing about this kind of stuff in your spare time anyway. So
mm-hmm.
if you can get paid for it, then great. And that seems to be a really common theme within the Web3 space is the people that are here, and maybe as you mentioned, maybe the people that are left because of the bear market, maybe the people that are left are the ones that are really passionate about the space and really passionate about what they do. So I think being able to find a project that you're so interested in, I think is really, really important because there's so much stuff you can do, right? You can either be DeFi or more the infrastructure stuff, layer one, layer two, whatever it might be. There's so many types of project within the Web3 space that, if you can find one that you're really, really passionate about, then hopefully that will go quite a long way to solving some of the burnout
Yeah.
stuff as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Find something you believe in building wise, and then also something that taps into like your abilities in a way that you find enjoyable is a big one too. Try to find something that that brings the best out of you. I like writing for me and being creative and the stuff I put out there. Like I just enjoy it naturally. Like I would be doing it even if I wasn't, doing it formally for a project. And that's why you can tell like it's the best fit you can hope for, and that's really ideal. It's not like, if you find that, that's amazing, but I think if you find the project you believe in and the team you really like being around, I think if you can find at least that, then you definitely have a winner.
Yeah, I agree. So Dmitry, you're obviously really, really passionate about the DeFi space and really passionate about what you guys are doing at RabbitX. Could you introduce us to RabbitX in a little bit more detail, please?
Yeah, totally. So we have been on mainnet since May, I believe, April or May.
Okay.
We are a perpetuals DEX on Starknet, though the deposits and interactions are done on ETH mainnet. Our model is very similar to DYDX's for those that have a little bit more of a technical understanding of like the exchange mechanics of how that would work. So we are an order book DEX, which means, order books are more of the traditional TradFi kind of way of providing liquidity. They're the way that, frankly, everyone outside of DeFi almost everyone. I mean, like the majority of like all markets exchanges, they use an order book. Some in DeFi use what's called an AMM, an automated market maker, which is kind of an inferior form of liquidity, but it's one that's worked so far because it takes a lot of scaling and throughput to support an order book on chain. Our order book right now, so you make a deposit on Rabbit. The order book is off chain. You make your trades and executions, and those all occur off chain. Again, this is just like DYDX, which is the biggest perps DEX by far. There's gas-free trading. We provide up to 20 times leverage. We're extremely fast. We have 8 markets as they stand right now. And, we have a gorgeous UI. We've got a lot of compliments from like pros and big traders. It's like this platform is truly a joy to use. Like, we don't want it to feel like a DeFi project. We want it to be as smooth and as usable as anything you'd ever encounter, like on TradFi or at a normal broker. So, yeah, we want to be the premier derivatives DEX in DeFi. We want to be the premier derivatives DEX, frankly, period. And, DeFi is a nice place to start and kind of build that product market fit. And we started with perpetuals because they obviously have strong PMF and crypto already. But we want to build this to be, TradFi instruments like commodities, Forex, gold, indexes, like, letting you trade the S&P or the NASDAQ on chain. So we have some very aggressive plans for what we want to list and what we want to let people trade. And check us out if you're a trader of any stripe. We're pretty great, and I'd put us up against anybody, honestly. So
that sounds cool. Got some big goals to bring a lot of more traditional stuff like the NASDAQ and everything on chain. Is that in the pipeline? Is that a bit of a dream of yours, or you've got a plan of how you're actually going to get there and execute
that? We definitely are going to get there and execute that. It's not. It doesn't have concrete steps right now insofar as like we have some other higher priority things we want to ship out first. Like we want a referral program to be out there. We have a couple other things like we have an airdrop we need to distribute. So, but we are actively discussing like which indexes we might list if we were going to do that. We're asking some questions from traders and users. Hey, which one would you like if this were to exist? It's actually not as difficult as it might sound, because an index price is just a composite price. That's you just need an oracle, frankly, and then you can let a market maker make their order book out of it, and then let people trade it. So we've listed markets pretty quickly when we found demand for them, and I would expect. I am kind of guessing here, but I would not be surprised at all for us to have maybe some more TradFi related stuff like indexes and what have you within a yearish or so. I might be I might be even a little too liberal with that. It might be sooner. It would not surprise me if it was sooner, but I can't give a concrete ETA. I'm not quite sure, but it's not that far away.
That sounds cool. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you face then moving into your role at RabbitX? Because it sounds like a project where you guys want to, as you mentioned, create a really good UI and user experience. Obviously, your role has evolved a lot, and to get the project out there, and obviously involved in a huge amount within the project by the sound of things. What sort of challenges have you faced in your current role and moving into your current role?
I mean, the biggest challenge is like finding my groove insofar as, we're all kind of in this marketing bucket now, and I'm one of like 3 non-technical people on the whole team, maybe 4, maybe 3.5. One of the guys, our CEO Ming does have some technical abilities, but he's not really a dev first and foremost. And so it's like, all right, how are we going to do this? How are you going to make this happen? Like, where's the, figure it out, like figure out how you're going to provide value. So like finding that niche was a little uncomfortable, but it was also really fun. Like I didn't know I could meme as well as I do, like I'd never really made them consistent like this. And now I make them all the time and they're very well received. And now I'm like, that's a skill set I have now apparently. And then, with the writing, like I knew I could write reasonably well before, but I've never done the very free flowing, truly like things I find organically interesting in putting that out there. And, that was a little, I don't know how this is going to work out when I did some of the weird stuff I started writing about initially. And, it's getting that, finding that voice, finding that kind of flow to where you can see something consistently working. You don't know until you try. And that was probably the most challenging part, was like seeing if those things would work and being unsure about it. And also they've been the most rewarding though too, because I feel like I am a vastly different employee than, a vastly different like worker, or however you want to frame it. Like when I first started, because I've grown and learned a lot throughout this whole process of like what hits, what doesn't, your own voice and kind of putting your own stuff out there, what skill sets you have that you maybe weren't even aware of. I never viewed myself as creative before, but I guess I am. I genuinely did not think of myself that way at all. So it was cool, like, kind of discovering that about yourself. And it was also challenging, at first too, because it's like, you don't know if you're good at this before you start doing it. So
yeah, I suppose you just have to give it a go, and yeah, as long as you put the effort in, and as you said, you're writing about stuff that you really want to write about, really want to talk about, then your passion comes through, I guess.
yeah.
And also, I feel like when you first start, you don't have to be amazing at it when you first start, right? It's something that evolves over time, and you get better with practice. So yeah, I guess that kind of comes from time. Are there any mistakes that you've made that you can attribute some of your biggest learnings to? Maybe focusing more on the learn from it as opposed to the mistake, obviously, but
Mm.
anything that really stands out to you?
Mm. Like in the DeFi vein, I can't think of any like mistakes, frankly. Like, it's funny, like I definitely have gotten much better through iterating and improving. Like I look back at some older stuff, or older, like even memes I made, and I'm kind of like, oh God, I feel like I'm vastly better than I was like even maybe like 4 or 5 months ago.
Yeah.
But I'm loath to call those mistakes. So they're not mistakes. They're part of like a development process. I definitely did get like some bumps and bruises in like the corporate world where, you know, and this is probably why I don't like it as much, because, when I deviated from my lane a little bit, or when I shared an opinion that no one asked for, like I got, I've had some stern talking to at certain
Mm.
positions I've had. And in hindsight, I realized like, hey, you have to know your place, know when you should speak, know when you should keep it to yourself. Uh, and like, understand uh, kind of motivations and what people want to see out of you and speak to that. So I guess those are more like Web 2 occurrences, though. TradFi, old economy type jobs where I chalk up to a mistake being a learning experience. In the DeFi
Yeah.
world, though, I guess I've been lucky that I can't really think of any of those things. More just like part of a journey that got me to where I am. So I wouldn't really call those mistakes. So just uh, developing, so to speak. I know that wasn't a terribly
Mm.
useful answer. I'm just thinking out loud from your question. I guess that's probably how I would frame it. The bumps and bruises came from the corporate world, frankly, from what I just described, and maybe less so from DeFi. Just a lot of learning in DeFi.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough. So if there was any advice that you could share then for someone who's looking to come and build a career for themselves in Web3, anything that you'd like to share?
Uh, don't be afraid to uh, don't underestimate yourself or overestimate others. I've met some people and seen some projects that raise a lot of money, and I'm just like, wow, I should not be afraid. Most people just, they're bold, they try, don't, they ask for it, and that goes a really long way. So, I mean, if you have something you want to give a go, or that concept you want to explore, or even if it's not even a novel concept, say you want to start a DEX or something, uh, and you think you have the business chops, and you're sufficiently motivated because you love this space, don't doubt yourself. Like, don't be afraid to go out there, see what, test the waters, put out some original thoughts, ideas that hopefully attracts like minds. And this is a space where it's very much like people respect what you have to say or what you want to accomplish, and they don't care that you have a McKinsey background or where you went to school. Like, they just don't. And if you lead with that, I think people will respect you. I think you'll get less respect. Like, I think it'll have the opposite effect if you lead with the very like credentialism or old economy pedigree focus. as like you should work with me because, I have an Ivy background or something. I don't think you'll attract any of the people that you should want if you lead with that. You might get some VC money and you might get some very like LinkedIn type people, but like you're not going to get the true DeFi genuine user and builder, and yeah, it's just a very different ethos. And I also think you'll fail to attract a lot of the genuine traders and users as well if you lead with that branding. So just it's very meritocratic. Um, engage with people, put yourself out there, don't underestimate yourself, and actually believe in the space. Like understand what's being built here and why it's structurally better. Don't be a tourist. Like people will be able to pick up on that. So I think that's a big one too. Yeah.
That's good advice. And if you could go back to the start of your career, any advice for your younger self?
Yeah. Get on Twitter earlier, honestly. I really wish I would have discovered it earlier. Like I was, if you curate it properly, it's just an amazing tool to just be exposed to new things and information you just would never get to otherwise. Seriously, like Twitter's, depending on how you curate it, because it can be just another social network if you're very, mundane with it. But if you find the right people and, listen to the right stuff and, don't get preoccupied with certain other things, like it's a great tool.
Yeah.
I guess my advice to my other self too would be like stop underestimating yourself. That was a big one that I struggled with personally. Don't be enamored with credentialism or certain pedigrees that nominally suggest that they might be more capable than you. Like that doesn't mean it at all. Just go for it. Learn about what you want to. Make sure you understand what you're talking about. But if you do, don't put yourself up against anybody, and bet on yourself. And don't be afraid to find the smart people, engage with them, and if you think something, it's okay to say it, and don't be too reserved, I guess. Giving myself a little pep talk here if I was younger.
No, it's good. It's I always like asking that question just to see what people would say. Because there'd be a lot of people listening who are just at their start of their careers. Maybe thinking some of the things that you've touched upon there. They may be having similar sort of thoughts and things really. So, it's nice, I guess, for people to be able to hear someone who is in a position that you're in now. Being able to kind of offer them advice and that kind of thing, really. So, no, I appreciate you sharing.
My pleasure.
So you mentioned that you got into the crypto space or DeFi space in 2020. So not that long ago, really. Why did you take an interest in Web3 and I guess DeFi specifically?
So like yes and no, mostly yes. I did get, I had a roommate who was into Bitcoin like when it was like $30, and
Wow, okay.
like, and then I accepted some like utility payments in Doge a couple months after it came out. So like I was like very much open to crypto, but I wasn't.
Yeah.
I thought they were just tokens bouncing around and whatever. They're currencies. I did a thread on why I cannot stand the word cryptocurrency. It's a misnomer, and I think it's deeply misleading, and it actually impacted me personally because I didn't think what was being built here was infrastructure. I thought it was cryptocurrencies, just tokens. And then in 2020, I started seeing kind of what was being built in DeFi with ETH, and I came across some yields that I was like, well, how are you guys doing that? Like, how are farming? Like, what does that mean? Like, you guys can actually trade. It's like, oh, okay, you're actually swapping on chain. That's definitely a service. That's a broker. Like, I started being exposed a little bit to the business side of what was being built here, like the infrastructure, like the real value creative, core stuff that's not just currencies. Like I would not be interested in this space nearly as if it was just currencies. And then I came across a company getting deplatformed from AWS, Parlor. I think this was actually early 2021. And then I found, like, I just stumbled across on Twitter, someone mentioning that this is what Filecoin's trying to fix. And I was like, wait, how is the cryptocurrency fixing cloud storage? Like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, oh my God, like this is this cloud storage business being built here too. And then I was just like full fledged, like, all right, I really need to get involved and understand the space better, because there's obviously a lot of really pertinent and useful stuff being developed here that's clearly paradigm changing. And that was like my real immersive moment. So like I've been very crypto friendly and, you know, agnostic for quite a while, but it was late 2020 or so where I really started to come across infra and, you know, smart contracts and stuff like Filecoin. And before then I was all like tech stocks mostly, you know, like in the financial world. So I was very like technologically already, you know, aligned with what I like to invest in. And when I learned what this was being built here, then I was just down the rabbit hole totally, and I just self-educated on all of it and just got really, really immersed in it. But that was my origin story. Was that your original question? Was how I got looped in here around that time?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, and to go a little bit deeper, why does that matter so much to you?
Which part?
So you mentioned around originally you thought it was just currencies, and then you started learning about projects like Filecoin, for example, tackling cloud storage, and then you thought, actually, no, it's the infrastructure here that's being built.
Mm.
Why is that interesting for you, but the cryptocurrency side of it necessarily wasn't as interesting?
Yeah, I mean, all those infrastructure plays, which I would view those as infrastructure. Like they're
Yeah,
allowing like human interaction and commerce and transactions to occur in a completely disintermediated and just highly superior way to like the previous instantiations of how that worked. You know, like it's axiomatic. The more entities you remove out of a supply chain, be it financial or whatever, like the more value is retained by the two parties in that transaction. And blockchains disintermediate the middle. And when I saw that like services were being provided and they're permissionless, they're anonymous, you can just, you know, they're peer to peer transactions. I was like, to me, it was as obvious that that's a superior economic and business model as when I learned what Netflix was. And I was like, well, obviously this is better than Blockbuster. Like streaming the thing into your home, like clearly this is a superior economic model. The only thing constraining it is technology, right? Like Netflix was always better than Blockbuster, but we had to go to the stores and buy cassettes because we didn't have high speed internet. But once that became a thing, then it's like obviously better. And when I saw that, like, okay, when I saw the things like, you know, smart contracts and DeFi Summer and Filecoin, again, having like a very technologically focused investor mindset, I was like, these can be viewed and understood as businesses. There's actual value being provided here. Like there's a reason why this should be valuable and people are going to use it. Like that's not just buying a Ponzi. That's not just buying a currency like that. It moves because the other currencies move, like whatever, like, you
yeah,
know, no disrespect to Forex traders, but like they're just bouncing around based off of supply demand stuff. Like there's not commerce happening there. Whereas like, you know, a technology stock or something is trading based off of a, you know, intrinsic value or a DCF calculation based off what the company's generating or earning, right? Like currencies are influenced a little by that at the country level, but there's something there that you can value and that you can understand why it's valuable. And when I saw that in DeFi, I was like, wow, okay, this is serious, and it's building something that is actually creating intrinsic and innate value for people. And that's really curious and interesting to me. And when I learned that, I was like, then I was like completely bought in. Like, this is here to stay unequivocally. The model's obviously
yeah.
better. And it's like ideologically too, very aligned with me as well, that it's like, you know, peer-to-peer transactions. I don't want anyone being involved with what I'm doing. I don't want to have to KYC with you. I don't think it's any of your business, right? It's like all of those ideological things I'm also super aligned with personally. So you blend all that together, and I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, I'm sold.
That sounds good. That sounds good. And do you think you mentioned there around the peer-to-peer transactions and how the KYC is there, and you don't necessarily want people kind of knowing what you're doing and that kind of thing. Do you think that will change as more regulation and stuff comes into the space over the next couple of years? How do you see that working? Do you have an opinion on it?
So there will definitely be a spectrum of you know, like the privacy, no KYC type stuff. Just like there's a spectrum of decentralization.
Yeah,
It is kind of a meme word because frankly, almost nothing is really purely decentralized yet, except like Bitcoin or Ethereum. Frankly, even all layer twos are basically centralized right now. You know, like I don't want to go too much in a tangent. I know I'm prone to those, but To your question, like, do I think that will change? I think there will definitely be services that, uh, will have you KYC, will have you docs. They're very compliant. They're the kind of things that BlackRock or institutions will feel comfortable using. And, there'll probably be the things that a lot of normies will be fine using too, because I don't think normies necessarily are all about the, DeFi, anarcho capitalism kind of ethos of this is none of your business. I'm not saying anymore. Like they're generally okay. Like, hey, you can scan my palm and I just bought something. Like they're the kind of person who will wear a chip. They're the kind of person who are fine sharing everything they want with people, and they just want a service that's cheap and effective. That'll exist for them too, and it's fine. Like it should. Like it doesn't need to be this Puritan. We should be careful to not be Puritans about this. We should, the thing will exist for guys like me who really want it to be like this hardcore cypherpunk thing, and it also exists for your mother who just is happy that it's cheaper and easier for her to send money this way. Also great.
Yeah.
I don't think regulations will change. That some of those more cypherpunk products continue to stay offered. I don't think they can stop that. They'll try, but the very nature of this, it's just, it'll definitely exist. I just think it'll exist in many different forms for different people, depending on their goals and their political, I guess, motivations or beliefs. And, you might have to move to other places if you want to use certain more pure instantiations of DeFi. That wouldn't surprise me at all, especially in the United States. So I don't want to go on tangent too much with that, but yeah, I unless you want me to, but yeah, I definitely think there will be many different ways to do DeFi, and it'll vary a lot on the centralization front and on the permissionless no KYC front too.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely see there being varieties of DeFi in the future. I think about my parents, for example, and they don't necessarily mind that what their technology is built on. As long as the application works and it functions, it does everything they need it to do, then they don't really know that it's on blockchain. They don't know that it's in the cloud, or they just don't necessarily know or care, I suppose. But I guess there'll always be the arm to the Web3 space that really does care about the decentralization and the mission and that kind of like stick it to the man type ethos around it. But I guess there needs to almost be that kind of equilibrium between the two, because otherwise we won't be able to get more and more people into the Web3 space, and the whole mass adoption side of things won't happen because because of the ethos that's within it or whatever it might be. So it'd be an interesting place to be over the next 5-10 years, and to see kind of how it develops. And there'll be plenty of challenges along the way, I would have thought.
Yeah, totally.
Are you is there anything that you would change about the Web3 space at the moment?
No, not really. Like, I mean, I guess if I could, what I would do, I see a lot of like OGs and very serious, people in the space that are not tourists and have been around for a bit, and they obsess over like Pepe coin and some of the obvious Ponzi's and like silly things. Like, but the thing is, like, at this point, they're obviously silly. Like, we know the silly things are silly. We've seen the patterns now. No one's getting really duped by this, right? Like, people know they're playing musical chairs. And it bothers me when I see even like some serious people just hyper fixating on like the fluff and nonsense and not on the serious substantive stuff that's being built here. And like my advice, like if I could change, is like to have these serious people who I can tell believe in the space. Chainlink God is a well-known one. I've actually had some debates with him on Twitter about this, where I'm like, dude, you see this space in its proper like gestation cycle. All technologies, especially ones that have a lot of value that's being created, initially they're kind of made for fluffy nonsense that doesn't seem very valuable. Like the internet being an example I always like to go to. Like it was mostly for porn. Like it was mostly like a place where like scammy people like did stuff, it's where drug dealers, and the black market kind of first came about. And then like, porn people, and like where the tech drove the tech. So it's like it initially, then you had people like Paul Krugman saying the internet's going to be like the fax machine. It's useless. And at the time, like if you looked at for just all it was making right then and there, yeah, if you're like I look 6 months out into the future kind of guy, that's all you would see. But anybody who had like an understanding of like, oh wait, this is a network of everybody, like clearly this will have other value adds besides email and porn. You wanted to keep building on the internet because you saw it for what it was. I feel like people are incredibly myopic in this space where they're just fixated on silly little games and nonsense as like being the only thing this can and ever will be. And it's a very normal part of a gestation cycle for a new technology. And, especially because we're building anonymous, permissionless access to financial infrastructure and trading. There's a lot of value to be captured here, and you can't gatekeep anybody. That's the fucking core of what we're doing here, right? So who is that going to attract? Who are some of the most biggest risk takers you've ever known? Criminals, right? Criminals are very risk seeking and they want to make money. So like, obviously we're going to have some scam artists and unsavory people here. Like, and I
Yeah.
just encourage people to view this in the context of what's being built. One, we should attract those type of people because frankly, if they weren't being drawn to us, it means we're not making anything of value here. And that would be a little concerning. Like, it's going to attract those type of people. It's just the nature of what it is. And as we
Mhm.
foster more stability and, create scalable products that people understand how to use and can gain access to, like, that goes away, or it doesn't even fully go away. It gets diluted out. It just is. It stops being the thing you see so much. It stops being so visible, and you start seeing the more genuine use here. And I would continue. You can even see that now, but just curate your feed better. Like, stop following the shitcoiners and the silly kind of stuff that's going on here. It's fine to see it, but like, stop painting this fallacy of composition where you think that's all that's being built here. It's just not. Like, it's really not. I say this as someone who's like working on a serious project. I see a lot of serious debt projects and yield curve stuff and just all kinds of cool things where it's like, I'm glad we're cultivating this. And yeah, I guess if I could change anything in the space, it would be like to change people's just preoccupation with the silly stuff that's really noisy and visible, and just start trying to, go out of your way to find incredible, cool stuff that's being built that has real value, and view this space through the proper developmental cycle that all technologies go through and that is not unique to us. We did not invent scams. We did not invent Ponzi's. These have existed well before DeFi. They'll exist well before. They're just instantiating themselves here because we're building a new financial framework, and clearly some stuff is going to create it like that. So just contextualize, and stop obsessing with useless stuff.
No, I like that. I like that. I just hope that because a lot of the stuff that you hear about in the mainstream media about Web3 and crypto and this kind of stuff is then focusing on scams and meme coins and pump and
Yeah,
dumps and this kind of stuff, right? I just hope that that side of it uh, doesn't downgrade the technology and the underlying kind of idea and ethos behind the space. And I guess that goes back to what you're saying. If you get really serious people within the space focusing so much on those meme side of it, then it kind of gives oxygen, right, to the flame of the meme and silly side of it, when there is such a serious and cool kind of underlying product and underlying technology that's being built. So
yeah, totally. And
yeah,
that's why I hold the builders and like the OGs to a higher level, because like, if CNBC wants to comment on a bridge hack or whatever like silliness is being, the whole, like, I expect normies to do that, right? Because it's easy to understand. They want to knock us for obvious reasons. I expect them to be adversarial and not useful and like effectively counterproductive always for us. Whatever. I have no standards or expectations for like the Bloomberg CNBC tier of like, MSM reporter coverage of us. Like, it's whatever. But I do get annoyed when I'm like, see like real creators and people and traders here saying that. I'm like, all right, no, you know better. Like, you seriously need to like stop following friend tech and the goofy stuff. It's just, they're the ones who upset me actually, because I actually have some expectations of them because I know they can see what's going on if they try. And I just feel like it's an effort
yeah,
thing, or just it's a lazy thing of just, you're following silly coins and stuff. So you just act like that's all that there is. And I'm like, you should know better. I don't expect CNBC to know better. I do expect you to know better. So,
that's no. I tend to agree, to be honest. So in your opinion, then, are there any other challenges that you think need to be overcome before we can take blockchain, or before blockchain does become more mainstream?
um, I think it's just basic scalability and accessibility. You know, going from a brokerage to on chain is understandably cumbersome still for like people who aren't like naturally interested in the space. Like they don't, self custody is also something that's rife with like a bunch of issues, especially for people who don't really care. Like they just more want their assets to be safe. Stuff like account abstraction, I think will help fix a lot of that, to where if you lose like your keys, or you can't get hacked because there's a multi-sig happening there and a company can actually recover it. You're giving a bit of a trade-off there with the pure DeFi ethos, but that's okay. Like again, not everyone's going to be purely on that. So I think making the self-custody less onerous and risky will be a big one. Scalability insofar as it's just being really cheap to use and quick. Layer twos are definitely working towards that, and it'll only get better. It just needs to keep developing. And just general ease of use, like once you're bridged out or once you withdraw it from like a broker on chain, it should just be a very intuitive experience for people. And we're definitely not there yet. So I just think having it be easily navigatable, scalable, and cheap, and having the use of it be not rife for possible, getting phished or scammed so easily. If you click a link, we can't have people losing their whole wallet if they click a phishing link, right? Like it's just, we need to figure out how to, there's going to be some trade-offs there with like self-custody, and that's fine. I think a lot of people will probably be okay with that. I personally won't be, but I think the normies will, and that's fine. And we need to just make it so they don't lose everything with one button click, and can navigate the space relatively easily without feeling lost or intimidated.
Yeah, for sure. And if you weren't at RabbitX and weren't doing what you're doing, is there any particular challenge that if you had unlimited pot of money, unlimited resources, time, whatever it might be, any particular challenge that you'd say, right, I'd love to have a go at solving this?
Yeah. Debt and like yield curves in general are a really curious one for me. On a personal level, this is probably the most successful series I've done, as the one on the Fed, on the Federal Reserve. And it's not a normal series. Like there's a reason why it's like, I take a very aggressive approach to like undermining a lot of the viewpoints people have on them, and that they're not nearly as impactful as they're made out to be. Like not even close. And that's really kind of made me really respect like yield curves and prices, costs of money, and how debt works. And that's really the underpinning, I think, of any major financial system, is you need people to be able to access like stable credit, and emphasis on stable. DeFi is very volatile right now, and what we mostly have is like money market funds or money market rates being used to let people borrow against, which you can't do that to borrow to invest in a capital asset, right? You cannot. Right now we have, I actually did a thread on this. The only borrows we have right now are financiers, which is to say you borrow to borrow again, to then invest it, to then loop it. You're leveraging yourself basically. You're just financializing everything, and yield farming, or you're just being a hedge fund about it, right? That's a financier to me. Whereas you don't have like economic borrowing happening, where people are borrowing money to buy a home or to make a capital investment in the real world. When we're able to provide that, like that's the thing I think that takes us to the promised land. And I'd be very interested in building stuff that focused on getting the enforcement of like under collateralized borrowing, and like getting the frameworks made to have that really work. I don't think that's something that actually exists purely in the digital space. I think there has to be some real world angles from that. I've actually been thinking about that a lot lately. That would be curious to me. That would actually something I really like. Just yield curves, like term structure, and under collateralized debt, I think are huge ones that we need to get down well. And I think they're very interesting too on a personal level.
That's cool. Well, someone needs to build it. So if it doesn't exist, you know what they say: if it doesn't exist, got to build it, right?
Yeah.
Would you ever, would you ever want to kind of found your own project and have a go at building it?
Oh, totally. Like if there's anything that's been really motivating, helping, building RabbitX and seeing it from the ground up. It's like how much we're all kind of figuring things out together real time. And, like none of us is like no one's had an exit here before on this team. Like I think even Ming, who our CEO, I think he's a first time founder, and he's done a great job.
Okay.
He's been very structured and organized about stuff, like very pragmatic, smart. I loved working with him, and we've figured stuff out together that neither of us really knew, and we just kind of got there. And it's been very like confidence inspiring to me to like when you see that it's not like this mythical magical thing to build something great. You just have to be structured about it and organized, what have you. So yeah, I'd love to, I have no intention at all to leave Rabbit right now. Like I love what I'm doing. I love the team I'm with, but it's definitely motivating for me too, is like, whenever the next step comes along, I am much more empowered now to like believe in myself, frankly, that like, no, I really, building a project, founding something, it's definitely something I'm interested in, and who knows when that'll happen. But it's been a cool byproduct of working at Rabbit.
Something to watch for the future. I'll be keeping a close eye for that day when that happens. So Dmitry, if you could sum up your advice that you've given today, which to be honest, you've talked through a lot, and I think people will be able to take a huge amount from the conversation. If you could summarize, is there any advice that you could give to people if they might be looking to follow in your footsteps? So they're in the Web2 space, they're looking to move into Web3, they love the idea of working on a project they're passionate about, they're trying to find their kind of their place in the Web3 space. Any advice you could give if they're looking to almost follow in your footsteps?
Um, put yourself out there, which again is consistent, I think, with some other stuff I've said. But you use some for more concrete guidance there. Use the crypto job boards. Crypto jobs list is how I got brought to Strips in Rabbit. Uh, those native job boards are really great. Like projects are looking at those applications. Angel. I had a huge amount of success with AngelList when I was like in the startup world. Like phenomenal resource. Yeah, I was able to consistently get interviews every week, like multiple ones from that. And I didn't do a lot of applying crypto because I was fortunate to like get some interactions pretty quickly. But the job boards and crypto jobs list and these other ones, like, they're great spots to like, these companies, these DeFi products are putting their needs out there. And even if there's not anything specifically that you can be used for, like the job I applied for, I knew I really wasn't the best fit for. It was like a marketing role that, I mean, I could do, but it wouldn't be the best use of my background. And I knew that, and I applied, and I was like, hey, listen, like, let's talk about other stuff too. In addition to this, like, I have a very broad generalist background. Here's my resume. And it started a dialogue, and there you go. So it's like, don't keep in mind that job descriptions are ideal. And you can tell me if you agree with this. Even job descriptions are kind of the ideal of what the company would like, but they're very much open to what do you got for me? I would describe it, if I can analogize it to anything, it would be like, if you were to ask a woman what her ideal boyfriend would be, like, well, he's 6'4", he makes $400,000 a year, he's really athletic, he's very handsome, he can play at least one musical instrument, right? Of course she has this ideal, but she's also realistic. Like, if she understands, if not quite that guy comes her way, you might have other intangibles that she'll be interested in as well. So like, view a job description that
Yeah.
way as kind of like the ideal, but don't be afraid to still apply for it, because you never know, and you'd be surprised, especially in this space, how you might find something that maybe even wasn't there to begin with. So
No, that's good. Really, really good advice. Well, yeah, Dimitri, thank you very much for taking the time to have a conversation with me today. Really enjoyed it. You shared some really good insights, some really good advice. Yeah, I found it really, really useful to understand your journey. To be honest, I think it's really cool. You obviously found a project that you're really passionate about. You're really passionate about the DeFi space. So, but yeah, thank you very much for taking the time to talk it through with me. If people listening or watching want to get in touch with you, I'm guessing Twitter is the best place to drop you a tweet at Bat the Bunny, and yeah, they can get in touch with you there if they have any extra questions or anything like that.
yeah, totally. Twitter's the place to be. Send me a DM. I have DMs open. You can also hop into our Discord. That link is in my Twitter profile. and you can message me there. Ticket, DM as well, Telegram. I'm on Telegram under the same handle, Back the Bunny. So any of those are good by me. I'm on all of them every day, and yeah, don't be shy to say hi, reach out, whatever. It's always cool to meet new people, and you never know how things develop. So
Great stuff. Great stuff. Well, yeah, thank you very much for your time, and I'll speak to you soon.
my pleasure, Jack. Thanks for having me on.